Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX, and again on Saturday morning at 9 on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Terry Slavens to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Good morning and welcome into Life Planning 101 right here on KATX, KWBY. Terry Slavens with you and Angela Kennedy Robinson with us here this morning.
We do have another great show today, and we have another special guest with us on the show today. And let me just first kind of tell you how this came about, because I think this is really neat. So we had the, and help me out, Terry, you'll know what I'm talking about here. We had at the park, we had K-Tab on the road when they came, and it was a great event. You know, lots of people were able to showcase their businesses, and we were up there, and we had a gentleman come up there, and he asked, now, what do I need to be doing? I've got, my grandkids, they live with me. What do I need to be doing for them? How can I be teaching them about money? How can I be, encouraging them? And so this all kind of spawned from there, and I, talking to Matt Irvin, which is another advisor in our office, and he's been on the show before, I said, this is really up your alley. Can you come up with some things, and let's put together a show on this? And so, he really did all the groundwork for today's show and put all this together. So, there's a lot here. There's a lot to cover, but I do believe it's going to be a great show. One of the things I want to compliment him on, and by the way, so we have a corresponding article, right, with every week's show. So if you want to get on there, it's going to have some more detailed information. It's going to be at katxradio.com or kwbyradio.com, or you can go on to kennedy-financial.com. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter, and that way you get these articles every single week. Sounds pretty good. They come right in your mailbox.
Can't beat that. You don't even have to do anything.
That's right.
That's always
right.
good.
That's right. So, but at the end of the article, he put a quote in here by John Poole, and I really like this. It says, "You must learn to save first and spend afterwards." And I thought that was perfect. That's perfect for what this is all about, because here we are, when our children, we show them spending first, if you really think about it.
Right.
Because all they see us do is spend. They see us go to the Walmart and spend. I mean, my kid, 3 years old, knows how to put the thing in the chip. I mean, he literally could put my credit card in the chip reader. He think, oh, that's money, right? Yeah. So he knows how to buy the toys. But, it's really important, I think, that we back up and stop and teach them to save first and spend afterwards. We forget that. We were taught that, right? 10% tithing, 10% saving. That was the old rule of thumb, and then you were able to spend the rest, right? But anymore, I don't think that that's getting done. And I kind of accredit that to the fact that we don't have cash.
No, everybody, rarely do I have cash in my wallet.
Yeah.
Because we have a card.
Yeah.
But with what y'all do as well, you go out and buy a new car, you show it to everybody. You buy an investment, you don't go show it. Or a life insurance policy. Oh, look what I bought today. I bought a $500,000 whole life insurance policy. Nobody cares.
That's
right. So you don't show it to people, and your kids don't see it. But they see the new car, they see the new boat, they see the new four-wheeler, they see all that stuff.
They see the spending. They don't see the saving. Yeah. And so, kind of getting back to the basis, and I thought, Matt, you did a great job with that quote. That one quote was the pinnacle, because it really does, it says exactly what we need to be teaching our kids. So, we got a lot to get through today, and I know we've got just a short time before we go to break, but I do want to go ahead and get into one thing that you touched on, Matt, in this whole outline for today's show, because I think it's the most powerful thing, and of course we can continue this after the break, and that's called the time value of money. Now, a lot of people don't really know what that means. I was shocked. I went to the junior high. They did know what it meant in 8th grade. They actually learned about this, so that was huge, because I didn't know what it meant when I was in 8th grade, and I was a financial advisor's child. So, but can you tell us a little bit about the time value of money and why it's so important to teach kids that?
Well, big picture perspective, time value of money is if you put in $10 today and it earns, 8%, well, next year you have another 8%, but it's on top of what you put in the year before. So it continues to grow, and each year it grows more and more and more. And so basically the longer it's in there, it keeps compounding, and so your principal gets higher and higher and higher. So what you're getting paid on is higher each year. And so that's why it's so important to start early, because then you have a longer duration for that to grow.
Yeah. I think it was really neat. I was showing the kids, if they started hay at age 24 versus 32, the dramatic difference, that not even 10 years can make in their savings, and, what it can do for them. And I thought that was pretty impressive to be able to show them that. But just, I think that, working with your children, if you could just get out a piece of paper, right, and help them, lay out $100 and show them what simple interest is, right? Show them that if they make 8% a year, that puts off $8 a year. So add up all those dollars for 10 years. What would they have? And then if they compounded it over here on the right, they'll probably have to get a calculator out to do it, right? Because after year one, they'd have the $108 times 8%. And then there on and so forth. So get them to add up and see what the difference is between that simple interest and that compound interest. Is a very, very powerful thing for a young child to see that. And I think that's really good. So
compound interest does wonderful things to your bottom line. We'll take a break, come back with more Life Planning 101 right here on KETX, KWBY. Welcome back in Life Planning 101 right here on KETX, KWBY. Terry Slavens joined by Angela Robinson and Matt Irvin. Good morning, folks.
Good morning again. And a great topic today, Matt. You did a great job putting all this together. Again, we're talking about helping your children really understand money. And then, of course, where do they need to kind of direct their savings? And we're going to get to that more towards the end of the show. But right before the break, we talked a little bit about teaching them about time value of money and how important it is to start early. And, I just want to kind of share, I think this is interesting. So I was, in a family that, and my dad, I know he hates when I say this, but I really graduated high school. I didn't understand any of these concepts whatsoever. I was kind of in the cobbler's family without the shoes. I think he thought I was supposed to learn all this by osmosis, and I didn't. And I think that was why I eventually came back to the business and knew that I needed to educate as many people as I could, because here I was, if I was a financial advisor's daughter and I didn't even know these things, wow. That's crazy. And so, I think it's really important that, I believe in those good old-fashioned family dinners and learning something at those family dinners and having, because it not only, of course, teaches things like this, it teaches values, right? But that's beside the point for today's show. Time value of money is so important. But I will say there was a couple things that my dad did when we were growing up that were extremely powerful, one of which is anytime we went out to eat, he gave us a budget. And I thought this was always interesting. And he said, here's what, because we always went to places and we'd want, of course, the nicest thing on the menu, right? And I was always a big crab legs fan. That was always my deal. So I wanted to go somewhere that had crab legs, right? But he said, okay, I'll give you a budget. And what you can do is you can eat for less and then save your money so that when we get to the place that has the seafood, then you can have enough money saved to buy your seafood. And that's how he taught us. He gave us $5 for dinner. Now, I know I'm showing my age. $5 for dinner every night, right? And then whatever money we had left saved, we could use that towards our crab legs. He also gave us $1 if we drank water versus drinking a Coke or tea. And that, he said, I'd rather pay you than pay the, restaurant by doing that. Well, what it taught us is that this money does not come easily, and by the time we got to this place with the crab legs, we all ordered grilled cheeses because we wanted a pocket of money, right? But I think what's really important by telling you that story is that, I think it doesn't matter what you do with your children, just being able to teach them about the importance of how money is obtained, and then the importance of when it's theirs, what it actually means to them. And is it important? Because those are going to teach them saving skills more than anything else. I mean, you can tell them all day long, but until you actually put something into practice. And I will say the one thing that I did do is I was always a saver. And I don't know if I should accredit it to that, but that's probably why. My brothers are both savers as well. So I think it's interesting how that came about. But let's get on to the next topic, talking about, what should you actually be doing? Because a lot of people say, well, I could put money in a college fund or get my kids to put money in a college fund, but what if they don't go to college? And Matt, I know you talked a little bit about this in your article. Why don't you elaborate on this?
Well, when we talk about saving for children, one thing I really like is the flexibility. And we have three options today that are just a few of many options to kind of teach your children about saving and the value of saving. But there are like traditional college savings plans that are definitely geared towards college. But like we talked, and I've heard Angela say this several times, what is education going to look like in 10 years? So college savings may not be what you need, and so there's different flexibility in custodial type accounts that allow you to use those funds for your child's needs that are above the standard level of care. If they need a new computer for school, as long as it's for that child's benefit, you can use some of these funds for that purpose. And there's other things. The one thing about that is then when they each reach age of majority, 18 or 21, depending on the type of plan, they get the lump sum whatever's left. And that sounds appealing to some and not to others. And there's another type of plan that allows you to kind of use the same for all these same purposes. It can be used education, even things like your first down payment for your home. But the funds, when they reach age of majority, become theirs, but they become theirs for retirement and not for just average everyday use. So there's a lot of different types of tools here we can use, but the biggest thing is, what are your goals and what are your plans for saving this money?
Yeah, I think that was a huge when you kind of touched on, in your article you touched on, okay, what are your real goals? I think that's where you have to start, right? And I look at my situation. I have one child right now. And if he doesn't go to college and I were to put a bunch of money in college funds, I'm not going back to school for any length of time. So what the heck would I do with that? And I think that's really important. And, sometimes that makes sense to think that way. Sometimes it doesn't. We live in a great state. We live in the greatest state, don't we?
Yes.
Texas.
Yes,
and I'm
absolutely.
sorry to all of you listeners who are clients that are in Montana or Arizona or Colorado, and you're thinking, nah. Yeah. But we do. We live in a great state, and we're not taxed to death here. And in some of these other states, you are. So, a 529 plan, in other states, you can actually get tax deductions at the state level.
Right.
Okay? You can't get them here in Texas. So, we have a totally different planning arena from somebody that maybe is in Arizona, for instance. And depending on your tax bracket, too, I think that
Sure.
that has a lot to do with it. The beauty of those 529s is that, they grow tax-free. Isn't that right, Matt?
Yep, tax-deferred growth, and then when they're used for the right thing, it's tax-free withdrawals as well.
Yeah, so that's huge. That's massive in itself. But the downfall, again, is, here I am with a 3-year-old. Do I really know what he's going to do? And I'll just give you an example of my two brothers. I have one brother that works in the business with us. He's been in school since he was, 5 years old. And then I think he said he was done at the age of 40. He said, I'm not doing it anymore, right? So I have that brother. And then I have the other brother that, owns his own networking business, computer business. And, he has more of a trade. So he doesn't have a reason to spend 40 years in school. So how do you know those things? I don't think you do know those things. So what can you do, right? And I'll just kind of give you an example of something we did with a client recently. It was really neat. They had a very high tax bracket between their state, federal, everything. They were paying almost 50% in taxes. And they also own a little business. So they were able to hire their son to work for them. And they can actually pay their son, and don't get me on the exact number here, it's close to around $6,000 a year without paying FICA, which is Social Security, right? Or Medicare tax. And so when they did that, that money's able to shift to him. And I think, Matt, this is kind of what you're talking about, right? Okay, so we can use one of two options here. You can use that Unified Transfer to Minors Act or Unified Gift to Minors Act, the UTMAs and UGMAs. Okay, now that's when. What were you saying about they could access those at what age?
Age of majority.
Age of majority.
Depending as 18 or 21, depending on your state and the plan.
Right. So they could access that fully. A lot of times people don't feel comfortable with that. Me as a parent, I don't feel comfortable with that because I always hear my dad in the back of my head. We're all dysfunctional. It's just a matter of how dysfunctional we are and in what ways. And if my 21-year-old is using drugs or, has a bad habit spending or whatever, I don't want to aid and embed those situations, right? So that might not be the best thing. But they are very good to be able to use because you transfer those taxes to that child and then they actually can earn interest. And you posted all these facts in your article, Matt. Did a great job with that. What was the earnings, I think, $1,050?
$1,050 earnings are tax-free. then the next 1,050 is taxed at your child's rate. So the child's not making much money. Most children don't.
Not much tax.
Not much tax. And then above that 2,100 is taxed at the parent's rate. So depending on what you have invested in there.
Yeah, and there's ways to work around that. In this particular situation, we were able to use municipal bonds to keep that tax rate really low. So, there's lots of things that you can be able to do, to help with that UGMA or UTMA, and you can spend it for them in the meantime. I think this is really powerful. I hear grandparents all the time, and we always have this conversation, and we talk about this life planning balance, right? And I hear them say, well, I want my grandkids to have a solid education, and so I want to leave this lump sum behind for them. And my question is always what I just presented. What if they don't go to school? And then I say, what are their interests now? And I say, well, they really like art, or they really like band. Or I said, well, what about using some of that money to send them to a camp today? Get them passion for learning today so that they want to do it later. You can do that through an UGMA or an UGMA.
Fantastic.
Yeah, really good. When we come back, we're going to talk about one more tool that you could be able to use through all of this, and we'll close out the show with some really great facts you don't want to miss.
We'll be back with more Life Planning 101 right after this. Life Planning 101 right here on KETX KWBY. Terry Slavens with you, and we're going to wrap this up. Great show and a lot of good information. I'm going to turn it back over to Angela Robinson and Matt Irvin.
Thank you very much. And so, Matt, let's talk right before we close out the show with some really what do you do type things. But let's close out the show and talk about this custodial Roth IRA, because I think this is awesome. I just love this concept for a young person.
Yeah, it's really great because it's got all the same characteristics as a Roth, but you have a custodian, so you have a two-part signer, right? It doesn't have to be your parent or grandparent, but someone that wants to help you be successful. And so what you do is you go out and earn your summer money, and even if you blow it, your parents can help you save, because they can deposit or contribute up to your earnings up to $5,500, which is the normal limits, and so that's really a neat way to help your children incentivize, because you say, okay, maybe I can match you. You say, if you put in, for every $1 you put in, I'll put in $1. We can go up to your earned income or that $5,500 limit.
Yeah, great idea. So tell us a little bit, what is a Roth IRA for those that don't know what that is?
Okay, so a Roth is used after tax money, and so you put that in and it grows tax deferred and then comes out tax free. And typically you have to have the account open for 5 years, or there's penalties for withdrawal. But it's something you access during retirement. 59 and a half, you can start looking to get that money out. So really, the way I like it is because it holds your children accountable. Because at 18, it goes from a custodial Roth to a normal Roth. The custodian falls off, but they're still held accountable by those limits of the Roth. So they can use it for education, hardships. If they come on an extreme hardship, they can withdraw a portion of that for a first home down payment. But
which kind of fits the gamut. That's
fits it all,
most people, that's their goals to help their children. It's either education or that first time home purchase, right? Or if they have a, disability,
yeah.
right? So, that fits all the gamut. Yeah. The biggest caveat is what?
Is the 5 years. Because if you don't have it for the 5 years, then it kind of it's a lot more restricted. There's some penalties involved. But if you think about it, saving for 5 years is not long.
Yeah.
If you start young.
So it has to be open for 5 years, right? Which is great. So start early is I think the biggest key here. And again, this can go back. This is a child, okay? So let's just pretend that you have a 5 or a 6-year-old. Are there things that if you own a business that they could do for you? The answer is yes, because I was doing them. Okay, so I didn't get paid. I did not have a Kitty Roth IRA. So, but just imagine that you could have, that Roth IRA, and then that money be accumulating for you for 10 years or 13 years. Huge. That's huge for you, right?
Exactly.
To be able to use for college, or better yet, you're forced to keep it in there. So that's kind of cool. Great information. Thank you so much, Matt. So I think, the walk away today, just by all of this, and this is what I recommend to any parent or grandparent, is help your kids really, number one, learn what saving is. Use cash for a little bit. Let them see cash. Let them see what setting 10% aside is for tithing and 10% aside for their savings, and use that. Get 3 jars. Help them learn what this is, right? Help them understand the time value of money. Number 2, do it on a piece of paper. Help them walk through it. And then show them if they do this in this many years, they'll have this, right? Even if it's $10 a week, what does that amount to? And then number 3, figure out that savings vehicle and help them understand that savings vehicle and what that means to them and what it means to their future. I know that's not a lot for, when you have a young kid today, but I promise you they're going to look back and they're going to think, gosh, my parents were smart. If you do that, right? So great show. Thank you, Matt Irvin. Appreciate you so much. And great advisor here in Eastland, Texas. Joined our team about, what was it? It's been almost
about a
year and a half ago. So we're blessed to be able to have this gentleman all the way from Idaho. Yeah, he knew Texas was great too. But we just thank everyone for listening every week. Again, my name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services here in Eastland, Texas. Stay tuned for next week's program. You might be the one piece of advice you don't want to miss.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Advisory services offered through Smart Money Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services Incorporated is an independent of Calton & Associates Incorporated and Smart Money Group, LLC.